Okay, so you've been thinking about what happens when power goes unchecked.
Even in a democracy.
Yeah, and that's kind of scary to think about, right?
For sure.
We're going to explore this idea of a president acting like a king, basically.
Right.
And we're using what you sent us, including this book, Dangers of Kings, Power, Corruption, and Democratic Defense.
It's fascinating because that scenario, completely clashes with the whole point of the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
The system of checks and balances is literally designed to prevent that kind of concentrated power in one person.
So how could a president, really, how could they try to act like a king?
Yeah, that's the big question.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Totally.
You've got the Constitution right there, but how could someone actually get that much power?
Well, that's where things get a little disturbing. The source material kind of suggests this possibility of someone with, criminal intent reaching the highest office.
Whoa.
Someone driven by, greed or this lust for control. We could be talking about corrupt officials, organized crime figures, even individuals with, straight-up authoritarian leanings.
That'll keep you up at night.
Yeah, no kidding.
But wait, hold on. How would they convince people to vote for them in the first place?
The art of deception, right?
Right.
And the source, it highlights some pretty effective methods.
Oh, no.
Think charisma, that magnetic pull.
Makes you just want to believe.
Exactly. Then there's all the populist rhetoric, tapping into people's anxieties, their desires.
Yeah.
Often by, exploiting divisions that already exist in society.
Oh, smart.
Don't forget propaganda, shaping the whole narrative to fit their agenda.
It's crazy how easily people can be swayed.
It is.
Especially when they feel like the system isn't working for them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The source even says that sometimes people support a criminal leader.
Because they just want change.
Yeah. Even if it's from, a bad source.
Exactly.
So let's imagine this. What if a criminal mastermind actually becomes president?
Oh.
The book calls it a reign of trouble.
Yeah.
What would that actually look like?
It wouldn't be good.
I don't imagine so, no.
The source suggests widespread abuse of power. They'd silence anyone who disagrees.
Wow.
Enriching themselves and their buddies through corruption.
Of course.
And they might even try to dismantle democratic institutions like the courts and the press.
Internationally, would things get messed up?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Think about it.
Yeah.
Alienating our allies.
Right.
Emboldening our enemies. Even starting conflicts.
Oh, wow.
There's even this chilling scenario they talk about in the source.
Okay.
Imagine, criminal leaders around the world all seeing this as their chance.
Yeah.
They unite and form these alliances that threaten global stability.
That is a scary thought.
This is pretty intense.
But wouldn't people, eventually rebel? They wouldn't just stand by and watch everything fall
I
apart.
hope not, right.
Right.
The source does say that there would probably be pushback eventually. Protests, civil disobedience, even attempts to remove the leader from power.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Right.
If this leader's been busy, consolidating their power,
right,
suppressing any opposition, controlling what information gets out there, it could be really, really difficult to get rid of them.
Oh, so it's like they make it so that the longer they're in power, the harder it is to get rid of them.
Exactly. It's like a vicious cycle.
Oh, wow.
And this leads to a big question.
Okay.
If these dangers are so real, so potentially bad, why don't people see it coming?
That is a good question.
Why do smart people fall for these charismatic, leaders and their dangerous promises?
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
I like that, yeah.
You know it's happening, but you can't look away.
And the source offers a few explanations.
Okay, like what?
Well, for one, access to good info might be limited.
Like that.
Or people are getting bombarded with so much misinformation and propaganda that it's tough to know what's true.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Exactly. Information overload.
But there's got to be, an emotional thing too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
These leaders, they seem to play on people's fears and stuff.
Yeah, they manipulate emotions like it's nothing.
Fear, anger, resentment.
All of it.
It makes it hard to think straight.
It clouds your judgment.
They appeal to our gut reactions.
Bypassing all that rational thought.
And then there's confirmation bias, right?
Oh, yeah.
When we just look for info that backs up what we already believe, even if it's wrong.
Confirmation bias is powerful. It can blind you to evidence that contradicts your worldview.
So we've talked about some pretty dark stuff so far.
It's a lot.
It feels like we've walked into a dark forest,
I get that.
But there's got to be ways to protect our democracy from these kingly types, right?
There is.
I hope the source offers some solutions. Some glimmers of hope.
Yeah, some light in the darkness.
Good.
It all starts with education. We need to give people critical thinking skills, media literacy, and a real understanding of how to be engaged citizens.
It's like giving people the tools to spot a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Exactly. People need to be able to analyze information, know fact from fiction, and understand how power works.
That's huge.
But individual responsibility is just part of it. Strong institutions are key too.
Like what?
An independent judiciary, a free press, and strong civil society organizations.
Yeah.
These are the pillars of a healthy democracy.
So they're like a democracy's immune system.
Totally.
Fighting off corruption and abuse of power.
I love that analogy.
They provide checks and balances, hold those in power accountable, and make sure the rule of law is followed.
It's all connected.
So we need education, good institutions, and what else?
Active citizens.
Yeah, active citizens.
Engaged, informed, willing to challenge those in power, no matter their political party.
It's like a three-legged stool. Education, robust institutions, active citizens.
All three working together.
Keeping our democracy balanced.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process.
Right.
A commitment to protecting a free and just society.
You were also interested in looking at some real-world examples.
Oh, yeah.
Of historical figures who acted like kings.
It's fascinating.
Moving past hypothetical.
Exactly. We can learn a lot from them.
For sure. The source mentions Louis XIV of France.
The Sun King.
Yeah, as like the ultimate absolute monarch.
The epitome.
What can we learn from him?
Well, Louis XIV is a perfect example of what happens when power goes unchecked.
Oh, cool.
He took all the power for himself, minimizing the role of the nobility.
Right.
And ruled with an iron fist.
Jeez.
He really believed in this divine right of kings idea that like justified his total authority.
Interesting.
And put him above any earthly limits.
Sounds like a recipe for trouble.
It was.
And the source also talks about Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
He wasn't a king in the traditional sense.
It's true.
But he definitely ruled Germany with an iron grip.
No doubt. Hitler's rise is a scary reminder of how a charismatic leader can exploit social divisions and manipulate a whole nation with propaganda, leading them down a path of destruction.
Wow.
His totalitarian regime, driven by a really messed up ideology, resulted in the horrors of the Holocaust and World War II.
It's a reminder that these dangers aren't just, theoretical.
No.
They've had terrible consequences throughout history.
Sadly, yes.
And then the source compares a modern leader to a king. Kim Jong-un of North Korea.
Kim Jong-un's rule is a disturbing example of dictatorial control in the 21st century.
So true.
He inherited this system built on a personality cult where his family is practically worshipped.
It's like something out of a history book, but it's happening right now.
I know. It's hard to believe.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is.
It shows how these old systems of power can still exist.
Yeah.
Even in a world that's supposed to be more connected and globalized.
It's a good reminder that we can't take progress for granted.
Right.
We have to constantly guard against the erosion of democratic values and the resurgence of authoritarian tendencies.
Absolutely. And speaking of ideologies, the source highlights the dangers of certain belief systems that have been used to justify oppression in the past.
And what's worrying is that some Americans hold ideologies that echo justifications for things like slavery and systemic oppression.
It's a tough truth to face.
It is.
But we can't ignore it.
Absolutely not.
So let's change gears a bit and talk about solutions.
Okay.
What can we do to fight these deep-rooted problems and work towards a more just world?
Well, the source really emphasizes the power of education as a tool for change.
Okay, I like it.
It's about promoting critical thinking, fostering media literacy, and providing access to accurate information about history and human rights.
So it's about giving people the knowledge and skills to recognize and challenge injustice.
Exactly.
We need to create a more informed and compassionate citizenry.
Yes. But education alone isn't enough.
Right. We have to take action, too.
So what kind of action are we talking about?
Well, it could be anything from participating in protests to supporting organizations fighting for social justice, or even just speaking out against discrimination whenever you see it.
Yeah.
It's about using your voice and your platform to support those who are marginalized and oppressed.
So it's about being allies and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Exactly. Silence is complicity.
That's a good point.
We all have a responsibility to speak out against injustice.
Okay, but it goes beyond just individual actions.
Right.
We need to push for systemic change, too.
Yeah.
Right.
You're talking about things like policy reform, legal challenges, and shifts in cultural norms.
Exactly. We need to address the root causes of oppression by changing the structures that keep it going.
Absolutely.
And that requires effort from everyone, right?
Yeah, lawmakers, activists, educators, and everyday people.
It sounds like a team effort, working across different communities and groups. It is. It's about creating a society where everyone has a chance to succeed.
Regardless of their race, religion, gender, or anything else that's been used to justify discrimination, right?
Right.
That's definitely something worth working towards.
For sure.
The source also brings up the importance of international cooperation.
Oh, yeah.
To tackle these issues.
Absolutely. Oppression doesn't stop at borders.
Right.
We need to work together as a global community.
Yeah.
To hold leaders accountable for human rights abuses and support those fighting for freedom and justice everywhere.
It's a good reminder that we're all connected.
We are.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Exactly.
It's about building a world where everyone has equal rights and dignity.
Everywhere.
This brings us back to the conversation about power.
Yeah.
And how to make sure it's used ethically, both here and around the world.
A big topic.
We've talked about strong institutions, checks and balances, and engaged citizens.
Important stuff.
But what about the role of individual leaders?
That's crucial.
How can we encourage ethical leadership in a world where power can be so easily abused?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
The source material offers some good insights here.
Okay.
It starts by acknowledging that power is, inherently a double-edged sword.
It can be used for good or for bad.
Yeah, depending on the intentions and character of the person who has it.
So it's not enough to have the right systems.
Yep.
We also need the right people in charge.
Exactly. We need leaders who are not only capable, but also ethical and compassionate.
Committed to serving the people.
Yeah, the common good.
But how do we find those leaders? How do we know who to trust?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
The source suggests looking at a leader's track record.
Okay.
Their values, their behavior.
So look beyond just what they say.
Yeah, examine their actions.
So we need to do our research, be informed voters, and hold our leaders responsible for what they do.
Exactly.
And we also need to create a culture where ethical leadership is the expectation.
Not the exception.
Where integrity, transparency, and accountability are just, normal.
The standard.
It takes effort from all of us, right?
It does.
From the people we elect, to the groups we support, to our everyday choices.
It all adds up.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
I agree.
We've gone from the dangers of unchecked power to the importance of education and engagement.
A lot of ground covered.
And the need to actually change systems to address oppression.
So much to think about.
Is there hope for the future?
There is.
I think so too.
As long as we're paying attention, engaged, and committed to making a more just and equitable world, we can face these challenges.
The human spirit is strong.
It is.
We have a lot of potential for change.
I agree.
What's the main thing you want listeners to take away from this deep dive?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing to remember is that power can be used for good or for bad. It's our responsibility to make sure it's used ethically. We have to hold our leaders accountable, fight injustice, and work towards a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Powerful message.
It's up to all of us.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listener with one final thought.
Okay.
We've talked about the big picture, but on a personal level, how can each of us resist the temptation to control others in our own lives?
That's a good one.
How can we be more humble, empathetic, and truly want to empower those around us?
I love that. Speaking of shaping the world, the source material also gives us some interesting ideas on how to deal with the really deep-seated issues of oppression, the kind that still affects societies everywhere.
It's like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
About how some Americans have ideologies that are similar to those used to justify slavery and discrimination in the past.
It's heavy stuff.
It is.
But we can't just ignore it.
We can't.
And the source emphasizes that we need a multi-pronged approach.
Like what?
One that combines education, activism, and actual systemic change.
So it's not enough to just change people's minds.
It's not.
We also need to change the systems that perpetuate inequality.
Exactly. It's about getting to the root of the problem.
Not just treating the symptoms.
That's a huge undertaking.
It is. Where do we even begin?
It's a daunting task, for sure.
Yeah.
But the source offers some good starting points. As we've already talked about, education is key.
Right.
We need to teach people about the history of oppression, how it shows up in our society today, and the tools we can use to challenge it.
So it's about awareness, understanding.
And empathy.
Right.
Exactly.
We need to create citizens who are more informed and compassionate.
But education alone isn't enough.
Right.
We also need to act.
What kind of action?
Well, it could involve things like participating in protests, supporting organizations that are dedicated to social justice, or even just speaking up when you see discrimination happening.
Yeah, good point.
It's about using your voice to amplify the voices of those who are marginalized.
So be an ally.
Exactly, and stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable.
Because silence is complicity, right?
That's right. We all have a responsibility to speak out.
Okay, but it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
We have to push for changes in the systems themselves.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're talking about policy reform, legal challenges, those kinds of things.
Exactly. We need to go after the root causes of oppression.
Right.
By dismantling the structures that make it possible.
It's about changing the rules of the game.
And this takes a lot of effort from everyone, right?
It does. Lawmakers, activists, educators, and everyday people.
It sounds like it takes a village.
It does.
Working together across communities and sectors.
To create a more just world.
A world where everyone has the chance to succeed, no matter their background, right?
Right.
That's a goal worth fighting for.
I think so.
The source also mentions international cooperation as being important.
Oh, for sure.
In tackling these issues.
Oppression doesn't stop at borders, you know?
True.
We need to work together as a global community.
Yeah.
Hold leaders accountable for human rights abuses.
Right.
And support those who are fighting for freedom and justice around the world.
It's a good reminder that we're all connected.
We are.
What happens in one part of the world affects us all.
Oh, that's right.
We need to create a world where everyone has equal rights and dignity.
Everywhere.
This kind of brings us back to our conversation about power.
It does.
And how to make sure it's used for good, both here at home and globally.
A big topic.
We've talked about having strong institutions, checks and balances, and engaged citizens.
All essential ingredients.
But what about the role of individual leaders?
Oh, that's crucial.
How can we encourage ethical leadership in a world where it seems like power corrupts so easily?
It's a great question.
It is.
And the source offers some guidance here.
Okay, what does it say?
Well, it starts by recognizing that power itself is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it can be used for good or for bad.
Right, it all depends on the intentions of the person who has it.
So having the right systems isn't enough.
Not at all.
We need the right people in charge.
We need leaders who are competent, of course.
Yeah.
But also ethical, compassionate.
People who truly want to serve others.
Exactly, who are committed to the common good.
But how do we find those leaders?
How do we know who to trust?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It is, and the source suggests looking at their track record.
Okay, so their history.
Yeah, their values, how they've acted in the past.
So look beyond what they say.
Exactly, look at what they've actually done.
So do our research, be informed voters, and hold them accountable.
That's right.
And we also need to create a culture where ethical leadership is the expectation.
Not the exception.
Where integrity, transparency, and accountability are just the norm.
Exactly.
It takes effort from all of us, right?
Yes.
From the people we vote for, to the organizations we support, and even our own daily choices.
All of it matters.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
I agree.
We've talked about the dangers of unchecked power.
And the importance of education and engagement.
And how important it is to make changes to systems to combat oppression.
So much to think about.
It is a lot.
Yes.
But is there hope for the future?
I believe there is.
Me too.
As long as we stay aware and engaged.
Yeah.
And keep working towards a more just world.
We can overcome these challenges.
Absolutely.
What's the one thing you hope listeners take away from this deep dive?
That's a good question.
It is.
I think the most important thing is to remember that power can be used for good or bad.
Right.
And it's up to us to make sure it's used ethically.
We need to hold our leaders accountable, fight injustice, and work towards a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
A world where everyone has a chance to succeed.
That's a great message to end on.
It is.
Before we go, I have one last thought I'd like to leave with our listener.
Okay.
We've been talking big picture, but on a personal level.
Yeah.
How can each of us resist that urge to control others in our own lives?
That's a deep one.
It is.
It gets to the core of who we are.
Yeah, and how can we cultivate more humility, empathy, and a real desire to help others?
I love that.
That's a really deep question, yeah.
It is. It really gets to the heart of what it means to be, a good person.
Right, like an ethical person.
Exactly.
Living a good life.
It makes you think about where real power comes from.
Where does it come from?
I don't think it comes from dominating other people.
Right.
I think it comes from helping them, lifting them up.
Empowering them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's about changing how we think about power.
Shifting our mindset, yeah.
From control to collaboration.
From competition to compassion.
Instead of trying to be better than others, it's about realizing everyone has value. Every single person.
No matter their background, right?
Right. It's about listening with an open mind.
Trying to understand.
Yeah, not judging.
Trying to see the world through their eyes. And realizing that our own experiences are just a small part of a much bigger picture.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thanks.
It makes me think about how we can all use whatever power we have.
Yeah, even if it's small.
To make a positive impact.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like through mentoring.
Volunteer.
Or just being kind to everyone we meet.
It all matters.
Real leadership isn't about bossing people around.
It's not about that at all.
It's about helping others reach their potential.
Exactly.
Creating a world where everyone feels valued.
Respected.
And empowered.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
We started by talking about a president acting like a king.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about the nature of power itself.
And what it means to be human.
It's amazing how these big questions take us to unexpected places.
I know, right?
It shows that there's always more to learn.
Always more to explore.
And always more to talk about.
So much to discuss.
We've covered a lot, but I think the most important thing to remember is that we're not helpless in the face of these challenges.
We have power.
By learning from history, recognizing dangerous ideologies, and taking steps to educate ourselves and others,
we can make a difference.
We can work towards a future where power is used for good.
For everyone.
Well said. And remember,
don't forget,
the search for knowledge and understanding.
It never ends.
It's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good way to put it.
Listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's made you curious.
Given you some new things to think about.
And remember,
you have the power to make a difference.
Don't underestimate yourself.
Never.
You can help make the world a better place.
We can all do our part.
This is DigitView.